Hey guys, it's part two, and today is day 999. So at midnight tonight, I technically hit 1,000 days of sobriety. We left off on where I was 8 months ago with my life, what I was thinking about, and and the things that changed for me. Why did I decide to become sober? Why the transformation from being somebody who was drinking a 12 to an 18 pack a night, rarely having a hangover, things like that. Um, as for some people, and they won't understand this, for others, they will. Um, Comic books and professional wrestling and my bubbas actually are what caused me to make this transition and what saved my life. I've been a fan of professional wrestling. I mean, I was a little kid when I started watching it, and then there was like a huge lull point. But 1998, when I moved out on my own, um, I my apartment got it wasn't cable, but it got like weird channels, and one of them was TBS, so I was able to watch WCW Thunder. Not that that is what saved my life, believe me, because that was over 20 years ago now. What it was I'm a fan of CM Punk's and Eddie Guerrero's, and um, I picked up the two Eddie Guerrero DVD documentaries from WWE, and a good chunk of them they talked about his addictions and not just to substances. He talked about how in the beginning, when he was making a really good paycheck, like he kind of just felt empty, so he would start buying things, and the buying things turned into needing, that didn't last for long. That didn't fill that void for him. So he ended up um, taking a pill or taking two pills or having a glass of wine or whatever, and it got to the point where he almost died because of it. He was taking GHB, and it was I think he said it was New Year's Day, or like in the morning of New Year's Day. It was over the Christmas holiday break, and he got in his car and drove several miles to go buy eggs because he wanted eggs in the middle of the night for some reason. And he fell asleep at the wheel and crashed and actually was thrown from the vehicle, which, 99 times out of 100 is fatal. And he said, the doctors and everything who looked at the wreck and looked at him and stuff said, had he been wearing his seatbelt, he would have been dead because he would have been crushed inside the car. So he started working on his sobriety. It only lasted a short while. It became bad again. Um, and by that time, he was working for WWE, and his friends had gone to talent relations and said something has to be done. And so they let him go, and they said, look, the door is always open, but you need to fix this. You need to get this under control. And he was devastated. His wife left him, took the kids, and it's just kind of one of those things where he had no choice but to either completely implode or to change. And he chose to change. He started going to like 12-step meetings and stuff like that, which of course is not for everybody, and it's not for me either. Um, but the documentaries are really, really good. And then I got the CM Punk Best in the World Blu-ray, and he talked about his familial history with substance abuse, his dad being an alcoholic, and how he witnessed that as a kid, and seeing it, he was just like, why would anybody do that to themselves? If that's what this does to you, why would you do that to yourself? So the combination of seeing somebody who could overcome this and become a world champion and regain a good monochrome, not only of his career, but he got his family back. His wife and his daughters came back and accepted him and understood. Of course, he passed away from heart complications, probably from the years of drugs and steroids and stuff. But he was still able to conquer that substance abuse, like the stuff that it does to your mind and your body. Punk has never done any drugs because he's straight edge, which is an offshoot, of course, of the punk rock movement, because punk rock, like rock music, was all about excess and just debauchery and stuff like that. And it was a lot of really horrendous things that went on. So he's never, drank or done drugs or anything like that. And it was during that time that I started my pre-contemplation. Like, I started thinking, like, well, could I be straight edge? Could I, decide to do something like that? And it was, like I said, it was never the intent to be sober and just stop completely. So on April 10th, it was a Sunday. Like I said, I drank 17 out of 18 beers. Got sick, called out of work the next day, which was a Monday, the 11th. There was one beer left. And while I know I should have cracked it open and poured it down the drain or just thrown it in the garbage or whatever, I drank one last beer. And that was it. So I think it was kind of necessary to have that, one, to be able to be like, okay, closing the door, because today I make the conscious decision no more. And in doing so, like a fog was lifted and I started to feel amazing. What was very, very strange when I was telling people how good I felt, they were like, well, yeah, you stopped drinking. And I was just like, no, you don't understand. Like, I feel like I could do anything right now. Like, I could jump off a cliff and I could live, kind of thing. Just whatever it was, I felt like I could do. And that was testament to how much I was drinking, not the fact that I was drinking. And after a couple of months of that, I actually had a day of mania. And the day of mania, working at a job that I didn't particularly care for just because of the stress level, where I would just get anxiety all the time. What's the next call going to bring? Well, what's going to happen? Like, is this person going to be flipping out and yelling at me? Like, that was my daily life. I believe it was a Monday, strangely enough. I came into work and all of a sudden, I was just like, bring on the next call. Like, I can do this. Like, just my head, like, my feet were normally tapping and my knees were normally shaking because of the anxiety. And this time it was basically because of the adrenaline. And then after that, the anxiety set in. And it became very, very hard for me to concentrate. It became very, very hard for me to get up and go to work. Once I got to work and the first call came in, I was usually okay. But that journey from when your alarm goes off to getting up to, making breakfast and brushing your teeth and, getting dressed and getting in your car and driving to work was a lot to deal with. And not that it's completely gone away either, but it's definitely a lot more manageable with the job that I have, with a lot of the tools that I've gained over the years, of managing my sobriety and eventually choosing to become straight edge. So what happened is my stepmom owns a yoga studio, and my dad was teaching and still is teaching meditation. And so he invited me to try meditation. He said he wasn't saying this is going to work, this is going to be definitively what changes things in your life, but he said, why not use the tools that you have at your disposal? And he was freaking right. So I tried it. It's still a couple of years later. It's still very, very difficult. Sometimes my mind will not quiet. I get distracted. I'm just, I'm too flustered. I'm too angry. I don't feel like I need it, so I don't put myself into it. Um, and but I gave it a shot because my thought process with the changing of the guard in being sober uh, actually was Einstein's quote on insanity, which is essentially, and I may not get this completely right, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing every day and expecting a different result. I was drinking every single day when I came home from work and expecting that somehow that would magically change my life. So I had to change something. And the equation that, it didn't matter how much I drank, when I woke up in the morning, I still had to deal with the same issues I was dealing with, became pretty prevalent. So I did my best to remove that. And after a month or so of being sober and the good feeling vibe going away, um, I figured out that I needed to do some other stuff. So I started managing things. I would do my breathing exercises before work, but pretty much only before work. Um, I started exercising more often. The last couple months while I was at Simpatico, I one of my coworkers was going to the gym like 4 or 5 days a week, like while we were working and stuff. And like at 4 or 4:30, she would be making her pre-workout mix and stuff. And so she's this tiny little thing who's like 5 foot and maybe 100 pounds. And I started this weird silent rivalry with her that I never said anything about until after I left. Where when she was making her strides to be healthier and stuff, that I was just like, I'm not gonna let her outdo me. So I would go home and I would work out, and it just became this thing for me. Um, I had to get a number of other things under control for myself as well. I had to get the financial question and worry under control. So I got my mortgage fixed, so that I could afford to keep my house. I got started getting all my credit cards and stuff like that more manageable and stuff. I quit smoking January 25th, I believe, was the last puff I took from a vape, in 2017. So it's been almost 2 years. Um, and then the other quotient from that was to find a new job, because this job was hard on me for the last 4 months of working at Simpatico. I was tired. I was sleeping, but like I was just exhausted. Um, I got a call back from Pima Council on Aging, where I'm currently working, and um, I talked to my dad, and he said, "So the thing you need to know is if taking this job is going to be good for you, because at least for the first 6 months to a year, you're going to be better." And that kind of like that fatalistic thing popped into my head. I'm like, what do you mean the first 6 months to a year is going to be good? Like this whole thing is going to be good. Like, so it's going to suck again? And I think it's how you manage it. It's what you make of it. It's what you do of it, or what you do with it. So I made the most of it, and I left um, Simpatico and started with Pima Council on Aging. I'm still there almost about a year and a half later. Um, I stopped drinking soda maybe 2 months into, 2.5 months into the job, because I was just like, what else can I do to change things? And since then, I've had soda sporadically, but it's one of those things that's like, uh, if I couldn't quit that completely, I'm not going to kill myself over it. I'm not going to beat myself up over it, because that by itself is not as harmful as drinking or smoking. Um, it got to the point with the anxiety, jumping back, sorry, to when the anxiety set in after about 2 months. I started on an anxiety med. I do take meds for my obsessive compulsive disorder, but it's an antidepressant. It's not an anxiety medication specifically. The plan with my doctor at that point in time was to use it as a tool. And once I get all these things figured out, stop. So about a month or 2 months into PEMA Council on Aging, and this is the crazy part, because at the end of the first month of being at PEMA Council on Aging, my dog Guri passed away. And this was a huge challenge for me because this was the first really big challenge I was facing sober. And I didn't drink, I didn't pick up a cigarette, I didn't go back to any of that stuff. I stayed with plans that I had. It was over a long weekend. It was Memorial Day weekend 2017, and I had planned to rearrange my office and my front room so that like more people could come over and I could draw and watch movies and it'd be a more comfortable environment. And I told myself, well, no, you're not going to do that. But then I flipped in my head and I said, no, that was the plan. This shouldn't hinder the plan. So I rearranged my front room. I've rearranged it 2 times since then. But it was really good to stick to that plan because I think that routine is what really works for me. They say that a lot with people in recovery, AA, NA, Gamblers Anonymous, what have you, that it's extremely important to stick to your routines. Now, I don't subscribe to 12 steps. I'm not a part of any 12-step program. I'm doing everything on my own. But there are portions of things that I don't agree with that I do think work. Like I'm not a religious person, I'm an atheist, but there are tenements of belief structures that I kind of like and I kind of gravitate to and I utilize them. So there is good in things that I don't follow. But at the same time, I do my best to stick to my routines. I do my best not to have a lot of downtime. I do my best to be honest about things and forthcoming. And I think those are things that have, especially the being honest and forthcoming, are things that have really been a part of my life for most of my life, even before the drinking became problematic. So jump forward about a year to 2017. We're talking March, April. We're right at the year mark. And during the course of the first year, I started having some cravings here and there where it'd be like, oh, it'd be nice to have a beer with this meal. It'd be nice to, go to the bar, and have a drink with so-and-so or what have you. By this time, I was about 2 or 3 months without cigarettes as well. And I've never really done drugs. So there was nothing else to kick to formulate the idea of being straight edge. And at around that year mark, I started having a lot of cravings. They weren't harmful cravings. They weren't cravings that stuck with me for a really long time or anything, but they started to become like a daily occurrence. Daily occurrence as in like 5 or 6 times a day. It'd be like, you should have a beer today. And then it was gone. And then it'd be like you'd go into Circle K or whatever and you walk by the beer aisle and it would trigger something in my head kind of thing. So I really made the commitment to then becoming straight edge. And the reason I did that was because it's another challenge. I was ready for that challenge at that point in time. It went from I can't drink to I really don't want to drink to what can I do next to be even stronger for myself. And being straight edge is just a label. It's not, I'd still be the same person if I didn't call myself straight edge. It's not like I'm out here extolling the dangers and the poisons of alcohol and smoking and drugs. People know that stuff. They're not stupid. People allow themselves to make those decisions because it's what they want to do, and then it gets to the point where that's what they have to do to survive. I understand that. I understand that Pretty well, actually. I don't fault people for their vices. I do fault people for having those vices or having those frailties and then doing nothing but bitching about it and choosing not to correct them or not to fix themselves. I don't have a lot of sympathies for that. And that may sound really, really harsh, but this is coming from somebody who for a really long time didn't have a lot of willpower and changed all these things about himself. I don't hate the person. I hate the frailty. I hate the inability to want to change enough to actually do something about it and commit to it. I haven't had any slip ups. I haven't, taken a puff of a cigarette since I quit. I haven't had a sip of alcohol since I quit. That's not to say other people don't go through those relapses or where they're just like, I think I can handle it kind of thing. I think it's okay, which is what my original intention was. But I've come to the conclusion that that's not who I am anymore. And that chapter of my life is over. I still see it from time to time, very, very seldomly. Like last week, it was last week, was the first time I had a craving to drink in a really, really long time. But I had been having a stressful few weeks with some friends who weren't responding to my text messages. Somebody I was into on a physical level, again, not responding to text messages after having a conversation with them that seemed pretty deep and valid. And it also being, Christmas and New Year's time, like I don't like those times of year. It's not fun for me. I don't get a kick out of it anymore. So it just sucked to be that time of year. And then on top of that, to have, a friend who doesn't respond to text messages or phone calls and, a potential romantic interest that at one moment seemed really open to the idea and all of a sudden just didn't respond anymore. I did have one of my first cravings and kind of a severe one, and I just kind of put it out of my mind and kept doing what I was doing, which I think was watching a movie or TV or something like that. But the X's, they're very faded right now. So around the 1 year mark, when having those multiple cravings every single day, what did I do? I'm very auditorily cued. I'm very visually cued. Which is why I talk to myself to solve problems, because if I'm just thinking about it, it's very hard to be alone with those thoughts. And what I do is I say things out loud, I can hear them, I can process things a little bit better, and it ends up being easier for me to come to solutions or grasp something as concrete or fix it. And I know that like some straight edge people have X tattoos somewhere on their body. I didn't know if I wanted to make that commitment, because what if still sober 20 years from now, but I'm like, what if the concept of being straight edge or the name of being straight edge doesn't work for me anymore? But it works right now. And what visually would cue me? So Friday, after I get off of work, and usually after I finish my workouts, I now X my hands with a trusty fat chisel tip Sharpie. Pretty much every week. I've only ever missed, I think, 2 weekends, and one was because I was sick and I wasn't going anywhere or doing anything, and the other, I think it was just like I kind of plumb forgot because I was so busy. But I do that to remind myself who I am and remind myself why I am. It's kind of like an activation or a transformation for the weekend. I get to do that because I made it through another week. I get to do that because I put in the work every day. I use the phrase better than you, I'm better than you, because it's a connotation to being straight edge, to having that discipline. And a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people get offended by that. Like, fuck you, you're not better than me. And I used to think that. I'm better than you and I do drink, like it it has to do with the discipline. It has to do with it being me pumping myself up. It has to do with me pounding my own chest and announcing to the world, this is who I am. You don't have to like it, but you have to deal with it. So the second portion to the I'm better than you is you can accept it or you can do something about it, which is my challenge to people to rise above and have those moments where they become better than. So that's super, super, super important. But this is, we're at the over 25 minutes. I've been rambling, so I'm going to shut this off right now. This is day 999 of 1,000. At midnight, we hit the 1,000 mark for being sober. My name is John Anthony Chihak Soltero. I am an artist. I am a comic book creator. I am a son and a brother and a friend. I am a hard worker. I am disciplined in what I do. My name is John Anthony Chihak Soltero. And I feel really fucking great to be alive.